If you've come across my channel before, you might have guessed I like the Pokemon manga. Often regarded as the more mature counterpart to the anime, Pokemon Special has earned praise from YouTubers and influencers for its darker and more mature themes, and is a really good piece of media that fans still hold up and appreciate to this day. Many fans probably know, however, that even if you just assume someone is talking about Pokemon Special when you bring up the Pokemon manga, there are dozens of other Pokemon series. Some more talked about and covered, like Pokemon Rebirth or the Electric Tail Pikachu, and some which have become a little more obscure and less popular over time. As a fan of the franchise, it sucks that people don't know about these series, and I would like to try to shine some light on some hidden gems with you all, covering what might be an old favorite or something you've never heard: Magical Pokemon Journey. Originally titled Pokemon PPP Adventure, with PPP representing the Japanese names of the three main Pokemon characters, rising popularity of the magical girl trend of the 90s and early 2000s. The series was published in Chow Magazine, a monthly shoujo dating back to 1977. For anyone who isn't familiar, shoujo is the term for a show or comic that is targeted towards young women, usually between the ages of 12 to 18, while its counterpart, shonen, is targeted towards young men in the same age range. While we often get shows that break the mold, shoujos often deal with romance, growing up, and personal relationships, and this series is no stranger to those things. Magical Pokemon Journey beautifully blends elements of Pokemon with shoujo themes, featuring our protagonist, Hazel, attempting to win her crush's affection while embarking on adventures to catch Pokemon. The series starts when our main character Hazel tries to give her crush a love potion that blows up on them. Angry at her mad scientist grandpa who gave her the potion, which I don't think they're actually related, grandpa is just the name, not her actual grandpa, make her a love potion. Fired up from hearing this, she immediately sets out, finding a nearby Pikachu, who runs away shortly after the encounter. Not worried about the loss of not catching Pikachu, she marches on, soon running into her crush, and is excited to tell him about the Pikachu she saw as a way to try and impress him. Pikachu then returns to give both Hazel and Almond a shock, knocking out Almond, but to her own disbelief, the Thunder Shock didn't affect Hazel, who, as it turns out, was wearing a protective outfit her grandpa gave her for going out to catch Pokemon. This moment brings Hazel and Pikachu together to start their grand adventure. This first encounter, while just used to set up the plot, really sets the precedent for the story. Hazel, throughout her kindness and through the connections she makes with these Pokemon, catches them, but never actually throws a single Pokeball. While the story continues to cover Pokemon, the main plot revolves around Hazel trying to get Almond to like her, as well as the friendship she makes with the Pokemon around her. The story devolves in a sense to a Pokemon comic around collecting Pokemon, to a slice of life shoujo that uses Pokemon to tackle themes of romance, relationships in life, and friendship. As a matter of fact, most of the Pokemon have human traits like speaking or speaking where humans can understand them. The next chapter, we get to meet Clefairy, who's dealing with anxiety from being bullied by Ekans. There's a really great running gag that showcases servants that bend to her every will, and also lives with a Squirtle. Another one of the more chibi-drawn characters in this manga, Squirtle is someone who's never met a boy before, so when he gets to meet Almond in fleshed-out chapters with often rewarding adventures. While it often does feel in some ways stereotypically like a girl's writing for girls, it's such a nice change of pace from battles and catching Pokemon, and is so welcome after consuming so many different kinds of Pokemon content that feels so similar. The art style is similar to Ranma 1/2, or a lot of other types of shoujos at the time, with large eyes, exaggerated facial features, and plenty of emoting. The Pokemon may come across too stylized for some, especially when you compare what Pikachu looked like at the time in other forms of media like the cards or anime compared to what this Pikachu looks like. But the author does a great job at poking fun, having a cameo of Ash and Misty, with Ash's Pikachu drawn in the typical Pikachu style, discussing the differences and breaking the fourth wall in a very playful fashion. In addition, the About the Author section has Yumi going through what Pokemon she used when playing Blue, and her experience about making the manga and playing through Pokemon Blue, and her choices in doing so. I think that little section is so worth reading, if nothing else has caught your attention here. It was written at a time when so much felt unknown in the Pokemon universe, and when everything seemed possible. We only knew about 150 Pokemon, and Red and Blue hadn't completed their Pokedex to share to the world. From Arbok thinking he has to win over a girl, versus winning in a fight versus one, mermaids during a beach episode, a scary test of courage, it's honestly just so fun and cute, and I just wish more people had the opportunity to read it. Let's talk about why someone might not read it, or why it might not be as well known when something like Pokemon Adventures or Pokemon Special is still fairly relevant today. The Pokemon franchise floods the market with media, merch, and other content, making it challenging for fans to keep up. Let's take my specific situation on when I was growing up as an example. If a brand new mainline Pokemon game just came out, and you can only get a game or two a year, you don't want to ask for a spin-off game, when you can ask for a mainline game. For a mainline game, you can play with your friends after school or on the playground. This is even more true at the time of Magical Pokemon Journey's release. Releasing in July of 1997, Adventure Tale of Pikachu came out just 1 month after that, and while it may not be as relevant today, Pokemon Pop was read by 1 in 4 elementary school students in Japan. CoroCoro also ran a huge promo. Obviously wouldn't be injured if you decided to buy the Chow magazine instead of CoroCoro. I'm saying all this to try to paint a picture why it might not have sold as many copies, and why there might not be as many physical copies today. And it looks like 1 million copies of Chow sold during the time the original Pokemon series was in it, which is a huge number that shouldn't be undermined. The internet now considers the English version to be lost media, however, and while I don't think it's impossible to find, they're non-existent, and if they are let go, it's for a high price that years over years we've seen continued. How would you go about doing so? Well, there are 10 volumes in total, but if you're wanting to read in English, volumes 8 through 10 were only released in Singapore by Changyi Publishing, and they did that 5 years after the books had already finished, releasing one in 2008, one in 2009, and one in 2010. And while I can't find the numbers on sales, that sounds like they probably sold way less than the original run did, due to location waiting so long. The company liquidated in 2014, however, leaving the original volumes 8 through 10 out of print perhaps forever. You still need volumes 1 through 7 to complete your collection, be that Viz or Changyi translations. You could in theory find all of these, getting absolute steals on them at $150 each for the collection for 1 through 7 would be a bit over $1,000. At the time of recording this, not all volumes are available for sale in English, besides 2 sellers I found in Singapore who have volumes 1 through 10, but made it very clear they're not going to ship, and that the only way to buy them would be to get a ticket to Singapore. Your last bet would be to buy the monthly releases that Viz broke the volumes into 4 pieces each to sell before the volumes were released. Let's round some volumes up and some volumes down at the time of recording this to $50 a book. So, $50 times 4 per volume times 7 volumes total puts you at $1,400 for a Shoujo Pokemon magazine. But what if everything doesn't go according to plan? What if you need one more book to finish your series? Let's say 4, part 1, but you finally look, find it online, and bam! You realize you ended up with the previous book, Kadabra's Magic Show, which has the exact same cover on it. Not only did Viz reuse cover art for different books, but they reuse cover art for split up books, and for the volumes, which also share art between the volumes. The only visual distinction separating the books is the volumes have a tiny pink dash under the title as a visual discrepancy, and the Changyi translations have a star on the spine and on the cover. I keep bringing up if you can find them, because as of right now, PPP is not readily available to the public, with the only versions available online being the raw screenshots of the Japanese manga. So, what is there to do if you want to read these? Well, you can fly to Singapore, you could hope to get lucky and search over a few years for an English collection that hopefully gets put up for sale, or you could just buy the Japanese manga, and if you can't read Japanese, that's okay, as there are some really cool people online always trying to preserve the franchise and translate regional releases that not everyone got. And I really believe and hope that one day we can all read it without worrying about money or location from preventing us to do so. When the first games came out in Japan, it was typical to look at video games as something that are just for boys, but we soon realized a much more diverse audience were playing them. We soon found that the games were very appealing to the rest of the world as well. It would make us very happy if, through Pokemon, people can connect with each other, regardless where they are or who they are. While this is just one manga of many that I'd like to cover, like the sequel, there is so much we could talk about when it comes to Pokemon manga and the franchise in general. Let me know if you've ever read the manga, or if there's any other manga you will want to hear me talk about in the future, or just franchise topics in general. Special thanks to everyone who has ever previously supported me on this channel, in one way or another, and here are some of those names on the screen now. It's been a nice change of pace from my very different video content I've posted on this channel before, and I'd like to possibly explore where that takes me, and how you feel about it. I'm going to end the video there, but thank you for your time, and I'll see you on the next one.